الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم ربنا لك الحمد والشكر كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك وعظيم سلطانك. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك منك لا نحصي ثناء عليك أنت كما أثنيت على نفسك. اللهم اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار. اللهم اجعله خالصا لوجهك الكريم لا ابتغاء سمعته ولا شهرة ولا رياء. أما بعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from all of you, inshallah, and all of us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq, the ability to continue to worship Him as He ought to be worshipped, Azza wa Jal. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this half of Sha'ban give us the tawfiq to follow on the footsteps of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Just very quickly, a few points about Sha'ban, half of Sha'ban, before I proceed with the Seera. Depending on the calculation one follows, tonight is the night of the 15th, could be the 15th of Sha'ban, meaning tomorrow is the 15th. And those who follow moon cycle, it is the night after. Regardless, there are so many ahadith about the virtue of the the 15th night of Sha'ban, but most of those, if not all of those, are considered by the ulama as weak, or some of them are fabricated. Which means the ulama say the night of the 15th of Sha'ban is, there is no specific ibadah, no specific act of worship that is required on this night, except what you have been doing every other night: Quran, Dua, Qiyamul Layl, Tahajjud. There is no specific salah, or there is no specific virtue in salah in these nights. The only hadith perhaps that it comes, that some scholars accept as sound, is the hadith that says on the night of the 15th of Sha'ban, Allah Ta'ala looks at the creation and He forgives everybody except those who commit shirk and those who have shahna. Shahna means enmity towards somebody else. In other words, Allah Ta'ala on the night, and this is a hadith that is strong or sound according to many ulama, and therefore if there is any virtue in the 15th, about the 15th of Sha'ban, it is this one. That is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks at the creation on this night and forgives everybody, meaning every believer, because the exception is, except those who commit shirk, and those, so this is clearly those who don't believe in Allah Ta'ala, who have committed shirk, and then those who have shahna, those who do believe in Allah but have enmity towards somebody else, particularly a relative or a friend, and the idea is that we should try to cleanse our hearts from any form of enmity towards others. Allah Ta'ala. The Seera of Rasulullah, coming back to the Seera, last we started talking about, we got to the point where Rasulullah was in the house of Arqam bin Arqam, the 17-year-old young Sahabi who was hosting Rasulullah and the companions. And we said that the da'wah ila Allah, the call or invitation to Allah, was secret at the time. They did not want to draw attention to themselves because they were few in number and they were still weak, and they did not want to draw too much attention to themselves. And this is important to note, because Rasulullah ﷺ, despite the fact that he was aided by divine help and support, he followed what is known in Arabic as as-sunan al-kawniyya, asbab. He took all the halal asbab. And there are, the scholars, they speak of sunan shar'iyya and sunan kawniyya, meaning there are universal laws that we must follow and abide by, because this world is a world of cause and effect. And if you try to go against that, then it would beat you up. The world will beat you up. So Rasulullah ﷺ, despite the fact that he was aided by Allah, he took always precautions and all the necessary measures, halal measures, in order to make sure that his da'wah succeeds. He took all the necessary measures, and then whatever happened, he left it to Allah Ta'ala. And this is a very important lesson for us, because sometimes people think that if I'm working for Allah Ta'ala, or because I'm worshipping Allah Ta'ala, or because I'm going to the masjid, or because I'm involved in da'wah, I should not take any asbab. I should just, the Arabs say, ala barakah, just leave it be. And Rasulullah ﷺ showed us again and again, as we shall see in the whole Seera, Rasulullah ﷺ would always try to go with the norms or the laws that Allah Ta'ala, or the pattern of laws which Allah Ta'ala created. Right? So this is known as Sunan Kawniyya, universal laws, cause and effect. You want to eat, you don't just sit down. If you're hungry, you sit down and you make dua, Ya Allah feed me, and stay sitting down. It's not going to happen, right? When it did happen, it happened in exceptional circumstances for exceptional people to teach us about Allah Azza wa Jalla, like with Maryam, radiyallahu anha wa alayhi as-salam. When she used to be brought up by Zakaria, and every time he came to the mihrab, كلما دخل عليها زكريا المحراب وجد عندها رزقا. Every time Zakaria came to see Maryam, mihrab, this is a mihrab, the niche. In English they call it the niche, the mihrab, meaning he had a musalla. And every time she was always in salah. And every time he came in, he found that she had food which wasn't in season. And he never said anything the first time, the second time, the third time, the fourth time, until eventually he said, أَنَّ لَكِ هَذَا. Where is this from, O Maryam? And her response was straightforward. It is from Allah. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَرْزُقُ مَن يَشَاءُ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. Allah Ta'ala can give whosoever He wants without account. Yes, Allah can do that. And Allah has the ability to do that. But that's because Allah Ta'ala chooses to do so. But this is the exception. And the norm is that you have to get up, you have to open the fridge, you have to take the eggs out, you have to crack them, and you have to cook them, and then you eat. That is the sunnah. These are the laws of Allah Ta'ala, right? And unwise is he who doesn't do so, right? And so then there are sunan shari'ah. There are laws within Sharia, within Deen, that if you do follow, then Allah Ta'ala has promised certain consequences. For example, Allah Ta'ala says, if you follow the law of being truthful, because that's a law in Sharia, if you follow the law of being truthful, then Allah Ta'ala will write you in a book that is with Him as of the Siddiqeen, the truthful. Right? And so the da'wah at the beginning phase was secretive. And it was held in the house of Arqam bin Arqam, radiyallahu anhu, a young 17-year-old man. And this is again a message for the young brothers and sisters with us, that you have the potential within you to lead and be leaders and be the best. And age is not an issue. It is only in our times that we have made age an issue. We say, look at a person 17 years old and we say, oh, he's too young. Indeed, he is baligh or she is baligh. They are mature young man or woman. In fact, there is no adolescence in the Islamic narrative. It's childhood and you go to adulthood, right? And you take responsibility. And the responsibility includes when you are 17, you have to pray salah. You have to fast Ramadan. You have to do everything else that every adult does. Because you are a responsible human being now. And Islam therefore looks at this young man or woman in a very different perspective, in a mature perspective. That you are special. And society today says, no, you are still 17, you have to play and waste your time, and you've got nothing else better to do. No, you have more important things to do. And Allah Ta'ala deals with you according to your expectations of Allah. وَأَنَا عِنْدَ ظَنِّ عَبْدِي بِي. And I serve it according to his expectations of me. So young brother and young sister who is sitting with us, 17 or 16 or 15, ask Allah to guide you, ask Allah to lead you, ask Allah to make you a leader, ask Allah to make you carry the banner of Islam, and Allah can do it. And that's the example of Arqam bin Arqam. 17 years old, he said, I will shoulder the responsibility. Come into my house, and I will. And that's a very risky thing to do, to host and to house Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba. Because if Quraysh and the other tribes find out, they will persecute him. And the second thing that was happening concurrently or at the same time was the immense support that the ladies were given. Khadija radiallahu anha. And we said that the 4 daughters of Rasulullah had already become Muslim. Don't forget that. And also Abu Bakr and his daughter Asma had become Muslim. Don't forget that. And don't forget that the wife of Abu Bakr became Muslimah, and she later became one of the greatest scholars. She was a brilliant, brilliant woman. And although women in Islam are meant to be modest, so as men, but that does not mean they did not play a significant role in the making of Islamic civilization. They played a huge role. And again, we mustn't forget that. So quietly, so to speak, behind the closed doors, you find these women giving the ultimate support for these men who are risking their lives to invite people to Allah Azza wa Jalla. And so you see very clearly, it's the man and the woman and the child who are playing, the young people who are playing a significant role, who are shouldering the responsibility. And it is absolutely wrong for us to point the finger and say the Imam is the only person responsible for deen. No, you are responsible, and you are responsible, and you are responsible, and the sisters are responsible, and I am responsible, and you are responsible. And if we all shoulder the responsibility of deen, deen moves. For example, and I can't recall if I mentioned this before, but I'll mention it again. The first time women were prevented, ulama, ladies scholars, female scholars, Muslim scholars, were prevented from teaching in the masjid were when the colonialists occupied our nations. When they colonized our nations, because in the West it was a foreign thing to see female scholars of religion and teaching in houses of worship. The West had always seen that as strange. And that is why they needed a feminist movement, and that is why they needed to liberate women, and that is why they needed women's rights. We didn't need any of that in the Islamic tradition or in the Islamic civilization. Women from day one, as you have seen, from the get-go, from the day Rasulullah came house and he said, Zammiluni, Zammiluni, cover me, cover me. She was there, Khadija radiallahu anha. From that moment until she dies, radiallahu anha. When the colonialists, when the French and the Italians and the British then colonized our countries, Muslim majority countries, one of the first things, for example, the French did, was when they stopped women teaching in the mosques. So that then stopped. So now culture and colonization had led to the decline, I would say, in female scholarship, Muslim female scholarship. And there is nothing to stop them from becoming scholars. Alimat, Muhaddithat, and as I said previously, there were at least 8,000 top female Muslim scholars of hadith. And if you are interested, especially the sisters, I would refer you to the book by Dr. Nadawi, N-A-D-A-W-I, Nadawi, and the book is titled Muhaddithat, meaning female scholars of hadith. And to date, he has counted, I think it's 10 volumes, 8,000 of them. 8,000 Muslim, female Muslim scholars. Right? And today in some Muslim countries we don't have even enough proper room for the women to come to the masjid. When Rasulullah clearly said, don't stop women from coming to the masjid. Right? So everybody needs to shoulder the responsibility. And so when Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam started in the house of Arqam bin Arqam, and we said last time that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam took the house of Arqam maqarran li qiyadat al-Rasul as the house of leadership of da'wah. And this is because Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas radiyallahu anhu was seen to be praying in one of the valleys, and there was a big fight that happened between him and the guy who saw him. And so Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they fought each other and they bled, they hit each other. And then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam took Arqam, the house of Arqam, markazan jadidan sirriyan lid-da'wah. The house of Arqam became the new house for the house of da'wah, from which da'wah was to go forward. And we talked about Al-Jama'ah al-Ula, the first group of men and women who had accepted Islam. And we said already that aside from 13 of them, 13, the rest were from noble, honorable, prestigious tribes and families. The other 13 were they were either slaves in that time, and they came from the so-called low socio-economic background people. They were from the underdogs, they called them. And you shall see soon how Allah Ta'ala spoke to Rasulullah about those, how Allah Ta'ala says, stay with them and stick with them, and then don't turn your faces away from them. When the people of Quraysh, the chieftains of Quraysh came and said, we are not going to sit with you, O Muhammad, or listen to you when you are with the likes of Bilal and Suhaib and these slaves of ours. How can we sit with you? Right? And Allah Ta'ala commanded him to stay, remain with them. Now, it's important to understand the nature of those men and women who first took on this huge responsibility of da'wah ila Allah with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And the first thing we need to realize is that both men and women of the first period, of the early generation, those few men and women who had accepted the da'wah of Rasulullah sallam, they had completely submitted to the wahy, to the divine knowledge that was coming to them. There was no question about the fact that al-wahy was haqq, that revelation was haqq, that revelation was from Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, and that this is Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And this is very important, that we need to believe wholeheartedly, with no questions, with no doubts, with no ambiguities, with no hesitation, that the wahy is haqq, the Quran is haqq, and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is haqq. Of course, what had the great impact on their lives, aside from the wahy, the revelation from the Quran, as we shall see, the greatest impact and the greatest imprint on the lives of those men and women came from the shakhsiyya of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the personality of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and how could they not be influenced by him alayhi salatu wassalam. He was, even before he was a Nabi, he was already, as we have seen, recognized as Sadiq Amin. He was a man of beauty. He was a man of beauty, of physical beauty and beauty in character. He was a natural leader, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He was humble, alayhi salatu wasalam. He was fully dedicated, alayhi salatu wasalam. And therefore, they were taught by the greatest teacher, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And the teaching was through suhbah. The greatest way to learn deen is through suhbah, hence the term sahabi. Suhbah means companionship. Companionship. You learn from, you become what you consume, what you eat, what you see, what you listen to, and importantly, with whom you mix. That is our nature as human beings. We get influenced, like it or not. Even if you are on the straight path and you hang around with people who are not, and you think you want to influence them, if there are more than 2 or 3, eventually you will find yourself going astray. In fact, it's not surprising that sometimes young people who Allah Ta'ala gives them hidayah. Young people, they get hidayah and they start becoming the straight path, whether men and women. And now they start doing salah and coming to the masjid and doing what is halal and staying away from haram. And you find their own friends, Muslim friends, their very own so-called friends, try to bring them back to the way of batil. It has happened. I have seen it. One of the brothers that I know in Brisbane, a young man who was doing everything wrong before. You know, long hair up to his, half of his back, tattoo. He used to, even when I used to go and visit his parents, they say he would jump out of the window at night and run away and go and spend the night, doing all sorts of things. And then, subhanAllah, after a while, the brothers used to go and visit him and invite him to the masjid. Then he came to the masjid and he went with them in khuruj, in the jama'ah. And then his life changed and he became a good person. And he started coming to the masjid. And this is the first-hand story that I witnessed. And then he decided to go and give da'wah to his friends, Muslim friends. And the ulama say it's a very unwise thing for one person to go to a group of people because they have an environment. You need to create an environment. So he went and he said, Wallahi, they tried to put drugs for me in my tea so I can get hooked back into drugs and be like them. Shaitan. Right? So the environment and the company that you keep has the great impact on you. And no wonder then those became great men and women because the company they kept was none other than the company of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Suhbah means companionship. They were with him. They were there day and night with him sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. They not only listened to what he was saying, they lived it, they practiced it, they breathed it. And that is why they became what they became, radiyallahu anhum wa ardahum. And that's why of their qualities, they had amazing qualities, radiyallahu anhum. And I just want to talk about some of the most important qualities that those few, the first generation of Muslims and those who came after them. And this is all in the period of Mecca. As Rasulullah sallam, as we are learning about his seerah, it's important to understand how he was nurturing them, alayhi salatu wassalam. And the ulama said, in the period of Mecca, the first 13 years of Nubuwwah, what was the greatest focus of Rasulullah sallallahu? What was the wahi about? 13 years. What was the revelation all about to the men and the women? It was again and again and again about strengthening their iman, strengthening their aqidah, their convictions about Allah Ta'ala. In the first 13 years of Mecca, alcohol was not prohibited, riba was not prohibited, hijab was not ordained, salah was not ordained yet till just at the 13th year after Rasulullah came back from Isra and Mi'raj. So most of the commands of prohibitions were not even in place yet. Why? The Sahaba said something very important. They said, تَعَلَّمْنَا الْإِيمَانِ ثُمَّ تَعَلَّمْنَا الْقُرْآنِ فَازْدَدْنَا بِهِ إِيمَانًا. We learned Iman first, then we learned the Quran, and the Quran increased us in Iman. And this is a very important lesson for us, that Iman needs to be learned. Salah can be imitated, but Iman cannot be imitated. Iman has to be learned. You have to learn the Iman. And so the qualities that those men and women have, which everybody would require, especially if they want to shoulder the responsibility of da'wah ila Allah, which I believe is our sole duty in this country. I totally believe that our sole duty in this country is da'wah ila Allah. But if we have to shoulder it, then the first quality which they have is strong iman in Allah Ta'ala. Strong iman in Allah Ta'ala. And you shall see in the ayat again and again and again about Allah and the greatness of Allah and the might of Allah and Jannah and Jahannam and Akhirah. This was the message of the first 13 years of Mecca. The theme was Tawheed. The theme was oneness of Allah. The theme was the power of Allah. The theme was the Qudrat of Allah, the might of Allah. Why? Because when da'wah becomes open, especially when Rasulullah dies and those Sahaba, men and women, were to spread this deen to other nations, they need these qualities. And the first of those qualities is sabr. After iman is sabr, patience. Iman billah first. Then to practice what we learn and to have patience and to advise one another to do good, to advise each other on da'wah. And this is all summed up in one surah of the Quran, as Imam Shafi'i rahmatullah alayhi said about Surah Al-Asr, إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. That indeed all people are in loss except those who have faith, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, and do good, and they do da'wah, invite to Allah. Tawasaw bil-haqq means advise each other al-haqq, meaning invite to Allah, and they are patient in doing so. And Imam al-Bukhari rahmatullah alayhi said, Imam al-Shafi'i said, if there was no other surah but this surah that was revealed from Allah Ta'ala to humanity, it's enough for them. It's enough. So there is no, in other words, there is no salvation for this human being. And he will never and she will never become a perfect human being unless they bring these qualities in their lives. And the ultimate purpose of the da'wah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, therefore, was to refine this human being, to connect him and her with Allah ta'ala. And this is not for men only. It's not that the man only should become righteous. Man and woman should be righteous. And in fact, some ulama say it's easier for women to become more righteous than men because of their very soft and gentle nature. And because they have more rahmah, more shafaqah. They are generally speaking, they are more compassionate and more merciful. And that is why Allah Ta'ala gave them a womb. And the womb in Arabic is called rahim. And the word rahim is attached to the arsh of Allah. The womb is attached to the arsh of Allah, as in the hadith. And the word rahim is mushtaq. The word rahim in Arabic, which is womb, is mushtaq, derived from the word ar-Rahman, the most merciful and the most compassionate. And so women, when they exert themselves a little bit harder, they can reach heights of spirituality much quicker than men, trust me. Right? Because of their very nature. And the opposite is true. Society can work on women and they are an easier target to mislead them through the fashion industry and through this and through that. And that is exactly what is happening. That's exactly what's been happening in the last 150 years in the US, and they've exported that to our Muslim majority countries. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that they are an easier target. Yet at the same time, they can become quicker in their spirituality than men. So sabr, patience, sabr. And we can talk so much about sabr, we won't do that now. The second quality was the abundance dua that they used to make. Dua, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam taught them that the fact that you are my companions, the fact that you have believed is not enough. You need to inculcate in yourselves those qualities. You, the Sahaba, you need to bring this in your life. And he taught them dua is so essential. Dua al-ilhah ala Allah, to insist on Allah when making dua. Allah Ta'ala described them, يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ. They ask Allah day and night. They insist on Allah Ta'ala. Dua is very important. Dua is an arrow. The ulama say the strength of the dua depends, the dua is like an arrow. And the arrow will only hit its target depending on how good the archer is and how strong the bow is. And so if you have a good bow and the string is good and the arrow is good and you as the archer is proficient, then you will hit the bullseye. And likewise is the dua. If you raise your hands and the mouth is moving but the mind is thinking of something else, then the arrow will not reach. Right? That's why there's adab al-du'a, the etiquette of du'a, again, which I won't go through now here, which you can go and find for yourself. But du'a, he taught them du'a so much so that Sahaba radiallahu anhu said, we used to ask Allah even for salt. Salt that you use. Complete reliance on Allah Ta'ala. Yes, make du'a, and they took the asbab. They took the necessary means. Dua, he taught them dua. The other quality that they had was ikhlas, sincerity. That everything they did was sincere for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Absolutely for Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. And he was teaching them that, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That you don't do anything for your nafs, you don't do anything for name or fame, which is one of the most difficult qualities. But also they were firm, regardless of the earthquakes that came upon them, the challenges, they were firm and they weren't shaken, both men and women. And you shall see later how Khadija radiallahu anha was tested with the most difficult of tests. But she stood firm like a mountain, radiallahu anha wa ardaha. And during this period, da'wah started spreading slowly but surely among the tribes of Mecca. But there were few individuals who were now accepting the da'wah from Mecca. And there weren't yet big, large groups coming from different tribes, otherwise that would have drawn attention. And there were only instances. So each of the companions that we mentioned was from a certain tribe. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was from Tayyib. Uthman bin Affan was from Bani Umayyah. Zubayr ibn al-Awam was from Bani Asad. Mus'ab bin Umayr was from the tribe of Bani Abdalla. Ali bin Abi Talib was from the tribe of Bani Hashim. Abdul Rahman bin Auf was from the tribe of Bani Zuhra. Sa'id bin Zayd was from the tribe of Bani Adi. Uthman bin Mad'un was from the tribe of Bani Jumah, and so on. And you had a wonderful sample of amazing men and women who had already accepted Islam in the early period, but still they were being nurtured by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He didn't say, for example, the minute they become Muslim, all right, go out there and now expose yourselves and go to Mecca and go to the Kaaba and tell the whole world. He could have if he wanted. He could have gone, Rasulullah, the first thing he could have done is go right there near the Kaaba and say, I am Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, believe in me or you will all go to Jahannam. And Allah Ta'ala could have protected him. But this is not the sunnah of this world. Take the asbab. Be precautious. Think carefully. Plan ahead. Right? Don't throw yourself in deep water. You may not be able to swim. Right? And sometimes this is where we as Muslim community fail. Right? We don't plan ahead. We don't strategize. And it's not, I've always said, it's not the lack of talent or resources. We have so much talent, we have so many resources, but there are no strategies in place. Where do we, for example, as a Muslim community of Adelaide, where do we want to be 15 years from now? What is our strategy? The election is tomorrow. If you see, there are already about 6 Indian candidates running in the different seats. Good for them, not Muslim Indian candidates. Where are the Muslim candidates? Right? And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, if he taught us anything, he taught us to engage with the status quo and to plan. And this is what he was doing in Darul Arqam bin Arqam. Exactly. It's not about, that's it, I'm the strongest, we deserve. No, nobody deserves anything. In the hadith we read yesterday, the son of Adam does not deserve except a shelter to live in, and a cloth to cover his body, and some food and water. That's it. You don't deserve anything. Everything else you need to work hard for. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam taught them, as we have said, he taught them also the strength of iman, which is a very important thing that we need to focus on. In this period of da'wah, Rasulullah wanted to make sure that iman in the lives of these men and women is perfect. Given where they came from, Jahiliyyah, they worshipped idols, they worshipped statues, and as we have said, some of them would make an idol of dates, a sanam of dates, and when they got hungry, what did they do with it? They ate it. That's what they did. They took idols of statue. One of the men who became Muslim, he became a Sahabi, he used to worship this idol. And then the next morning when he woke up, he found that the wolf, the fox rather, had urinated on his guard. Right. And then he said to himself, what sort of God are you that you can't protect yourself from the urine of a fox? Wallahi, you're not a God. Right. But that was entrenched in the society. The Arabs, as we said, they knew Allah Ta'ala, but they needed associates. Hence, shirk, they needed intermediaries. And to cleanse that required 13 years, believe it or not, of da'wah, of focus on iman and focus on the unseen. And I mean, look at ourselves. What sort of, we may not be worshipping idols out there, but how many idols we have inside us? Right? How can we succeed in da'wah when we haven't fixed our own selves? We find our own selves, became strong in our iman and convictions and eliminated those idols. When we go for Hajj, people do tawaf 7 times around the Kaaba now. And of the advice that we give the Hujjaj usually, when we are in Hajj, we say, brothers and sisters, you make tawaf 7 times around the Kaaba, and then when you finish, you go and make tawaf 70 times inside the shopping center. Right? So Rasulullah wanted not only to cleanse their hearts and minds of the false aqidah that they had, but to instill in there something that is more powerful, something that is more pure, and that is tarsikh al-aqidah al-sahiha, to instill the pure, pristine beliefs about Allah Ta'ala, which they needed and we need. And so that is why the Quran Makki, the ulama say that the theme of the Makki Quran was to link this servant of his Allah, to link this servant with his Allah Ta'ala, and to teach them the following. And this is what Rasulullah was teaching those Sahaba in this early period. And this is what Allah was teaching through the Quran. First, in Allah munazzah min al-naqa'is, that Allah Ta'ala is transcendent. Transcendent from anything that is low. When we all say Subhanallah, we often translate that to praise be to Allah, but actually the better translation is transcendent is Allah. Subhanallah, transcendent is Allah, meaning Allah is far above and higher than anything that is low. And that is part of our belief system, that Allah Ta'ala موصوف بالكمالات التي لا تتناهى فهو سبحانه واحد لا شريك له لم يتخذ صاحبا ولا ولد. Allah is far above everything that they have associated with Him. And Allah Ta'ala has no wife, Allah Ta'ala has no son, Allah Ta'ala has no daughter. Because this also belief was among some of the groups in Mecca who were influenced by the Christians. وَأَنَّهُ سُبْحَانَهُ خَالِقُ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. And they were taught that Allah Ta'ala is the creator of everything. وَمَالِكِهِ. And Allah Ta'ala is the owner of everything that He created. And nothing that you can see in this world, or you don't see, but is created by Allah Ta'ala and is owned by Allah Ta'ala. And of the ayat that was revealed to them in that period, when they were with Rasulullah from in the house of Arqam bin Arqam, or when he was going home to Khadija and he would listen to these ayat and come and teach them. Inna rabbakum Allah, alladhi khalaqa as-samawati wal-ard في 6 أيام ثم استوى على العرش يغشي الليل النهار يطلبه حثيثا والشمس والقمر والنجوم مسخرات بأمره ألا له الخلق والأمر تبارك الله رب العالمين. In Surah Al-A'raf, Allah Ta'ala, and many surahs. In fact, if you want if you want to get a detailed, description of the Qiyamah and the Akhirah, a vivid, pictorial almost depiction of that, read the last juz of the Quran. Read it in a language that you understand. Read it. And about this, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says that Surah Hud and the sisters of Surah Hud made me go grey-headed because of the description of the Akhirah. And this is what that Quran is meant to do. Quran is not meant to be for barakah only. That Ramadan is coming now. Quran is meant to be understood and it's meant to impact on our hearts. In the ayah, Inna Rabbakum Allah, your Lord is Allah, Alladhi khalaqa as-samawati wal-ard, who created the heavens and the earth, fi sittati ayyam, in 6 days, thumma stawa ala al-arsh, then he established himself on the arsh, on the throne, as he knows best how. Yughshi al-layla wal-nahar, and he makes the day and the night alternate. وَالشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمَرَ وَالنُّجُومُ مُسَخَّرَاتٍ, and the sun and the moon and the stars are all subservient. بِأَمْرِهِ, by his command. أَلَا لَهُ الْخَلْقِ, he is the one who creates. وَلَهُ الْأَمْرِ, and he is the one who commands. تَبَارَكَ اللَّهُ رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ, may he be blessed, Allah, the Lord of the worlds. The power of these ayat, can you imagine, coming from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to the ears of those men and women of the time. وأنه تعالى مصدر كل نعمة دقت أو عظمت, and he taught them that Allah Ta'ala is the ultimate source of every bounty, be it small or be it large. And this is the iman that we need to have. Whether the bounty is visible or invisible, it is from Allah. وَمَا بِكُم مِّن نِعْمَةٍ فَمِنَ اللَّهِ, there is not a bounty in you or with you except from Allah. ثُمَّ إِذَا مَسَّكُمُ الضُّرُّ فَإِلَيْهِ تَجْأَرُونَ, and when harm comes to you, you run towards Allah. You scream to Allah, and you ask Allah Ta'ala. And he taught them, وَأَنَّ عِلْمَهُ مُحِيطٌ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ, that he taught them in the house of Arqam bin Arqam. And in this early period, before they merge out, he taught them that Allah's knowledge encompasses everything. That Allah knows everything. Allah knows what is hidden and what is revealed. Allah Ta'ala knows what is in the heavens and what is in the earth. Allah Ta'ala knows what ascends to the heavens and what descends from the heavens. Allah Ta'ala knows how many leaves there are on the trees and which one falls and when and how. And Allah Ta'ala taught them that Rasulullah taught them that Allah knows even and sees and hears the movement of the ant in the blackest night under the blackest rock. الله الذي خلق سبع سماوات ومن الأرض مثلهن. Allah Ta'ala, he who created the 7 heavens and the earth and 7 earths like it. يتنزل الأمر بينهن لتعلموا أن الله على كل شيء قدير. And Allah sends his command in the heavens and in the earths, so that you know that Allah is capable of whatever He wants to do. And reference here is to 7 earths. Yes, in the Quran and the Hadith, we are told 7 earths. Scientists now are trying to prove that, to say there are more than 1 earth. And the Hadith already talks about 7 earths. When they discover it, that's a different story. Right? وأنه سبحانه يقيد على الإنسان أعماله بواسطة ملائكته في كتاب لا يترك صغيرة ولا كبيرة. And he taught them that everything you do is recorded by the angels that are with you, whether small or large. This was the da'wah of Rasulullah. The adhan time. Inshallah. Barakallah fikum. We'll stop with the adhan and then we'll just continue until.
أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على حي على حي على حي على الله أكبر.
Allah.
لا إله إلا الله.
Just to finish off, inshallah ta'ala, and then we can get ready for Isha. So this is what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was doing with this early group of Sahaba was tarbiyah. He was nurturing them so that they can be able to shoulder the responsibility of da'wah. And the tarbiyah, the nurturing, was in trying to instill strong iman in their hearts and connect them with Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Tarbiyah is a very important concept in Islam, the nurturing, and this is what we all need to be doing in our own houses. So the house of Arqam bin Arqam should be taken as an example for our own houses. Each one's house should be like the house of Arqam bin Arqam, where, especially if you have children, your child is your project. He should be your project. You need to think, what do I want? How do I want my son to grow up, or my daughter, and what type of deen should they have? Nowadays, what some Muslims do, unfortunately, they say to some Muslims, give my son or my daughter deen, but not too much. Not too much. I don't want them to become, too practicing. A little bit is enough. This is a joke, there's no little bit, or deen is deen, it's complete. And trust me, the more deen comes in the life of your son or daughter, it's the better for them and for you, right? And so tarbiyah is important inside the houses. As Rasulullah nurtured those Sahaba, this is how we nurture our families, especially our children. And the first and the most important nurturing is the nurturing of iman, tarbiyah of iman. And the ulama say, especially when it comes to children, you teach them the love of Allah Ta'ala and the love of Rasulullah Sallallahu until they're able to comprehend higher concepts. And so when you're training and nurturing your children, the love of Allah should be inculcated in them. And that's why they say we talk to them about Asma. Allah Ta'ala's names are divided into Asma Jalal and Asma Jamal. Names of beauty and names of majesty. And names of majesty include names like Al-Jabbar, Allah the mighty, the overwhelmer, Al-Qahhar, the overwhelmer, Al-Muntakhim, the avenger. And they say our children don't need to know these, don't need to learn these names at a young age, but they need Asma al-Jamal. Allah ar-Rahman, Allah is Rahim, Allah is love, Al-Wadud, the most loving, Allah is the most kind, to instill in their hearts this love. And this tarbiyah, as Rasulullah did in the house of Arqam bin Arqam, is not only through words. You as the father and you as the mother need to be living that. You need to live it in the house so that that has an impact on your children. And you as the father and you as the mother need to be making lots and lots and lots and lots of dua, because I can tell you that the world out there is vicious. And everybody out there is trying to snatch your children away from you. Snatch that deen and iman. Not only shaitan of the shayateen, the jinn, but the shayateen of humans also. The human shayateen and the jinn shayateen, everybody has their targets on this child of yours. How can we take him away from the path? So this is a serious matter. When you read the Seera and you see how Rasulullah worked on the iman of the men and women, it means you and me as men and the sisters as women, work on your iman. Iman has to be strengthened. It is the foundation upon which everything else is built. And iman doesn't come easy. It doesn't come cheap, right? And the ulama say you can learn iman through pondering on Allah's closed book, learn what Allah says in the Quran, and observe Allah's universe. I find one of the most amazing ways for me particularly to increase my iman sometimes is to look at some of those videos that shows you the magnificence of the universe, the majesty of this cosmos. You cannot but help yourself to say subhanallah when you see it. If you go to an observatory and you have non-Muslims there and you have some Muslims there, and everybody's looking into the cosmos through the telescopes. And what do the non-Muslims say? Wow. And what does Muslim say? Subhanallah. Like transcendent is Allah. This greatness, Allah is higher than that. Allah created all of that. That increases iman. Right? Tarbiyah, nurturing. This is the word tarbiyah means to nurture. Right? It's nurturing. And how do you do that in your house if you don't have the skills, if you don't understand how? And that's why, what is so sad is that before we drive a car, any one of us, before we drive a car, what do? We learn. You get the book, you go through the boring book, you learn the book, then you go and do the test, and you get the L for Lawh in Arabic, L for learner. You do the learner, and then you get your P, and then you go open license, and then you drive the car. But when it comes to marriage, we just jump into it. When it comes to have children, we just have children. Nobody learns how to raise children, how to nurture those children, how to instill iman in those children. How can I be a role model for my children? Right? So tarbiyah, what we are seeing, you're reading about the tarbiyah of Rasulullah, he's nurtured the Sahaba, these men who nurtured them. Whether they were the age of Ali 10, or whether the age of Arqam bin Arqam 17, or they were the age of Abu Bakr and Umar or Uthman who were in their early 30s, or 40s in the case of Abu Bakr. Tarbiyah, my brothers and sisters, especially my sisters, you need to hear this and you need to listen to this. Your role is so important. You are more than a commodity. Women sadly have been used as a commodity. You need to look at Khadija and Aisha and Fatima and Asma. They were the examples. And don't sell yourself for cheap. You're more worthy than that. And your beauty and your goodness is in what is in your heart. The connections that you have with Allah Ta'ala. And we, the men, you have a huge responsibility not just to feed your children, your family, not just to feed them and get money and buy them a house and a nice car. Your responsibility, you are qawwam. You are responsible over your family. The great and the most important responsibility is how to bring them deen. And if you don't have deen, how can you bring deen? The women of the past, when the man used to go out to earn a living, they used to say this to him: ittaqillaha fina, fear Allah regarding us. فإننا نصبر على الجوع ولكن لا نصبر على النار. The women used to say to the men, fear Allah. When you go and earn your living, fear Allah. Because we can have patience, we can have sabr on hunger. We'd rather that you don't bring us any food if it's going to be haram or tainted. We'd rather be patient, but we can't be patient in Jahannam. The fire of Jahannam no patience can withstand it. This is a very serious matter. We do the seerah not so that we can entertain ourselves. The seerah is not about entertainment, right? And I deliberately do what I do. I could just tell stories if you want. But no, we have to dig deep. How is it related? How is the house of Arqam bin Arqam related to my house and your house? Tarbiyah, nurturing of our children. I said to you, if you are married and you don't have children yet, go and find out. Learn everything that you can about how to nurture your children. The food that you feed them also will have an impact on them. Forget when they're born. Before they're born, the child in the womb of the mother, what the mother does, what the father does, what the mother eats, and what the mother thinks, and what the father does, that has an impact on that child. It has an absolute impact. And that's why in Islam, the haqq of the child, the right of the child starts before it's born. Before it's born. When it's still in the womb of the mother. Find out. Learn. Just like you learn how to drive a car. And if you have children, look after them. They are your project. And if you have a project, if you want to build a house, supposedly, it's a project. You speak to the right architects, to the right engineers, you get the right design, you have a plan in place, you have a certain budget, and you know exactly what you want. That is your project. And the child is more of a project, more important of a project than your house. What budget do I have for him? What plan do I have for him or her? Where do I want to see them? And is my life consistent with that so that when it can have an impact on them? This is serious, my brothers and sisters. And the fact that Allah Ta'ala is giving you and me the tawfiq to be sitting here and to listen to this means that Allah Ta'ala wants khair for us. And the choice is yours. The seerah is meant to, the ulama say, من عرف السيرة أصبحت عليه دعوة يسيرة. Whoever knows the seerah, da'wah becomes easier for him, inshallah. And he and she will learn how to live their lives as Rasulullah wanted us to live. Because if you don't understand the seerah, it's very hard to put the deen in practice, in context. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. May Allah ta'ala reward you for putting up with me. جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد.